We're live for happy hour. Get it? What's going on, you guys? My name is Isis Daniel, and I am the Millennial Som, and we're here for Tasting Thursday with your girl, the Millennial Som. Let's go ahead and get into this thing. If you're in the building, let me know in the comments. Say hello. How you doing? What's going on, Vicky? What's going on, Jess? Nada, what's going on? Wine Bar, Cliff Family Winemaker. Come on, Laura. I'm super excited to have you on. Allie, dear, how you doing, baby? You guys are just coming in. Let me know, what are we sipping on today? If you're coming from TikTok, let me see a hashtag TT in the comments below. The Afro Queen, Sean, everyone from TikTok. Sean was in my band. He also in here. Hello. Earrings, come on through. All right. Mr. Mimosa, how you doing? Nia, you coming in? Again, everyone from TikTok. Let me see a hashtag TT. Vicky, what's popping? You guys, I'm super excited for today. Come on, TT. I'm super excited for our tasting today for a couple different reasons. I think that it's always exciting to be able to talk to someone within the wine industry and always hear their story, right? When we taste these wines, we have absolutely no idea who is behind making this amazing bottle of wine. How are you able to enjoy that glass? There's passion, there's history, there's a story behind it. So we do these Tasting Thursdays, not only to taste wine and have a good time for happy hour, but we're also doing it to really feel more intimate and get to know the true lover behind wine, who's making the wine for the wine lovers like you and I. That's the whole entire goal. So if you're ready to get into this tasting, let me see some girls doing a little wine in the comments, little, I don't know, other emojis. Give it to me. Y'all ready for today? So Cliff, we're not going to stay on this point, but I want to say it just so that we can get it out of our system, because we're not going to focus on this at all. But Cliff Winery, if you're familiar with the Cliff Bar, it is the same family who's running this thing. Again, we're not going to stay on that point. I just want to make sure I put it out there so that you guys can have some connection to who is actually behind this wine. Oh, Miss Charlene, what's poppin'? What you doing here? Yes, what's going on? Miss Steph is in the building. Nita is in the building. I'm excited. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add her in. There's no reason for us to sit around and linger. If you guys, let me know what you're sipping on in the comments below so that we can get this thing started. I'm about to add her in. Come on. Boom. And come on, Laura. Come on, girl. Get up in here. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
You know, I'm on the moon. Okay. No, let's go ahead and pause. Let's pause. Everyone from TikTok, y'all know what time it is. I have been talking about your Chardonnay. When I tell you, it's exactly what I need for the summertime.
It's
How
that
you
good,
doing?
huh?
Yes, it's really good. I mean, honestly, whenever I talk about Chardonnay, one of the main issues I have is that people come on and they're like, oh, I hate Chardonnay, because they're used to, malolactic fermentation, buttercream cheese, all that oak. And it makes, them feel like they don't like the variety, when in truth, you don't like that style. So I just want to say, before we jump into this, thank you for making a beautiful bottle of wine. I mean, this Chardonnay is absolutely it. But let me pause, because I just fangirled on accident. Tell us, who are we talking to? Give us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, my name is Laura Barrett, and I am the winemaker for Clif Family Winery. This coming growing season and harvest will be my 8th vintage with Clif Family. I started with them just after the 2014 vintage, and it's been an amazing journey. Yes. And I'm so happy just with this particular wine, because this is an example of why I love to work at Clif. We have creativity, we have innovation, we're doing new and exciting things all the time, and it keeps me totally engaged and super happy with what I do every day.
Okay.
Yes, I love my story.
Yes, go for it. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I started in the wine business in the year 2000. I was traveling. I landed on this little island in New Zealand called Waiheke, just off the coast of Auckland, and I started picking grapes as a backpacker. And that's kind of where it all began. I discovered my passion for wine and my interest. I had already been kind of a science geek in high school.
Right, I was going to say you were in chemistry, right?
Yeah. So I have a chemistry degree, which I had no idea what I was really going to do with, but I knew I did not want to work in a basement lab somewhere and never see the light of day.
I understand that.
So I decided to figure out some sort of creative application to the science, and a friend of my mom said you should be an enologist. And at the time I knew nothing about what that word meant, but the more research I did, and then I had the work experience in New Zealand, and it all came together. So I drove across the country in 2001, and I moved from Boston to California. Yeah. And I enrolled at the University of California in Davis for my master's degree. I studied there for 2 years, then graduated in 2003, made wine as an assistant winemaker at Fisher Vineyards for 5 years, and then a head winemaker for a brand called KC Flat Ranch for 7 years before landing at Clif. So fast and furious story, but there you have it.
I mean, okay, so first of all, I have to say this because, I thought that when you went to New Zealand, it was because you wanted to be in wine. So that's not the story?
Well, I knew about wine. I had already had this sort of realization that I didn't want to work in a lab and I needed to figure something out. And I knew about wine. So I was going with the intention of doing a little bit of, experimentation. Is this for me? What's this wine thing all about? So it was definitely an exploration.
I think that's so cool.
And then I got hooked because New Zealand is a beautiful place. People are super friendly. I had an amazing time. And then I knew for sure by the time I left.
Okay. So we're going to dive a little deeper into that. Okay. Because one question I always ask any person who's in wine, what was that moment when you realized, oh my gosh, I love this and I want to pursue it and figure it out beyond just someone saying, because we all have the story where someone was like, oh yeah, I think you would like wine. I think you should. But we all have that story where we're like, I'm giving my life to it. What was that?
So, I think a lot of people, it's a bottle of wine that they drink. And for me, it was not that. It was more coming from this kind of science background and really interesting or an interest in fermentation science. I wanted to know how things were made. How do you take these grapes and create this product, and what does that mean, and how do you get there, and what's happening chemically, in the process of converting sugar to alcohol. I was just kind of geeky, curious about that stuff.
We love the geeks.
But I would say that the moment where I decided that this is for me was that first harvest that I worked, which was the year 2000 in the Southern Hemisphere. And I was just picking grapes, and we would have the little lug boxes that everybody picks into now. And, we were all picking by hand, and you would chat with the person next to you. And then when your box was filled, they had this little old school Mini Cooper that they had ripped all the back seats out of. And so it was their harvest trailer.
Yeah.
So
self-made.
It was so small, it would fit down the rows. And so we would take our box and we would put it in there, and then we would move down to the next person. So then you were standing next to someone new and you were chit-chatting and having all these conversations. And so for that, that's just kind of a really fun-loving story about fruit picking in New Zealand. It's not serious wine. But for me, that was just such a happy moment that I think really got me hooked.
But I think that's true for most people, right? When we talk about the wine industry, and I don't want to sound get the smallest violin, here we go, Isis. But when we talk about wine, I think that there's this idea that wine is more intense than it actually is. And the truth is, we all love wine because of community, because of people. So your story is more of the same, where you experienced wine personally that made you want to actually, in a career, pursue it, right?
Definitely. It was the experience and the joy and the, just the passion for picking grapes and the process, and not just you know, this epiphany wine that was delicious. I mean, there's a lot of those that come after the fact, but
After, I think that my story is a lot like yours. I think I fell in love with the wine knowledge when I took my first course, my wine 101. I was like, I had no idea that all that goes into wine. But then again, the community and just people being so sweet and wanting you to taste wine and explore your palate, it was amazing. So curiosity, it gets us. If you're curious about wine, come on in, right? But speaking of curiosity, I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about what you're drinking, because we're dealing with some new releases, are we not?
We are.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so these are more than new releases for us. They go a little deeper, one level deeper, because this is a brand new vineyard for us. So Clif Family Winery is all about sustainability. We needed to source organic grapes, and we had a hard time doing that. So we decided, in order to have control over the farming and be able to source organic grapes, we needed our own vineyard. So we purchased 80 acres of almost bare land, which is really almost kind of unheard of in the Napa Valley in this day and age, on the valley floor in the Oak Knoll district. So it's just north of the town of Napa. So mostly on that's actually the southern side of the Napa Valley, and a little bit on the cooler side than, say, Calistoga. So we planted it in 2018 and 2019, and 2021 was our very first harvest. Yes. So these 2 bottles of wine are from the first grapes off of this new property, which we call Valle de Soto. So the Cabernet Franc, which I think you touched on yesterday, yeah, so that is rosé made purposefully. So it wasn't, you know, there's 2 ways to make rosé. You can make it as sort of a byproduct of red wine, where you pick the grapes for red wine making, you draw off a little juice early, so it's just a pale pink, and make rosé from it. That is not how I did it. I actually harvested the grapes early, so low sugar, high acid, purposefully to make this rosé of Cabernet Franc. It spent just about 4 months in 100% stainless steel, and you know, Cabernet Franc is known in the red wine world as being a little green, right? It can be very much even greener than a Cabernet Sauvignon, and you usually have to get it really ripe in order to get that fruit when you're making red wine. When you're making a white pink wine out of it, it's actually really, really fruity. So I just had so much fun making this wine. I think it can be a little bit more on the savory side of rosé. It is not sweet. There is no sugar in this wine. It's bone dry, super refreshing acidity, but it does show its varietal characteristics. Yes. Meaning that it's a little on the savory side. You do get a hint of sort of the greenness and the aromatics, but it's also bursting with fruit and an awesome summer wine. But I also think that as in the rosé world, this will really be very enjoyable in the winter as well. So this is going to be like our year-long rosé, where you can pop this open on Thanksgiving Day, and it's just going to be amazing and pair well with your food.
I mean, honestly, yes. All the above, yes. I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, listen, I love wine, and so I know I can be biased, but it is true that this is it is a dry wine. I was trying during our the tasting that we were having on TikTok, trying to explain what the experience was. And I mean, I don't know. I think you did great. I think you did great on both wines. I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the Chardonnay as well. Oh, and actually, before we jump in, there was a question. We have a couple questions in the comments. All right, so Your Only Dog Lover said, "Hey, Laura, ... How do we novices discern different shards? Oak, buttery, fruity? So how can we kind of decipher between different styles of Chardonnay?"
Yeah, so I think there are just a couple of key descriptors that will tell you that it's a barrel-aged, barrel-fermented, oak-driven chard, and I would call that butter, and the toasty oak character, right? So you're going to smell it as, you know, it's not like a raw style woodiness, but it definitely has, I think the toastiness really stands out when there's a heavy dose of oak. And butter is the malolactic fermentation. So this, here I go with my geeky science, diacetyl is the compound. Diacetyl smells like butter that you put on movie movie popcorn. So that is a byproduct of the malolactic fermentation, which is that secondary fermentation that converts malic acid to lactic acid. So that's going to be what makes it creamy and buttery. So creamy, buttery, toasty, that's going to be your high, also price point. If you pay $70 for your Chardonnay, you can, you know that it's been an oak for a long time.
Yep.
And new oak for the most part. And this Chardonnay, having seen no oak whatsoever, I get a lot of like citrus, like lemon character, a lot of stone fruit, apricot, even some like pineapple.
Yeah.
So definitely
got the pineapple.
Yeah, more on that tropical side of things. And you're not going to find any oak character, and there's no buttery character whatsoever. I get a little vanilla bean. That's the most.
But I find that so interesting with there being no oak. When I read, obviously the tasting sheet, and I was like, vanilla bean.
Vanilla bean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I think that's a nod to the varietal itself. So as much as we can blame all this creaminess on the malolactic fermentation, there is something in the varietal, in a more pure form, that has that sort of hint of creaminess, which I would say is the vanilla bean aromatic.
So was there any type of lees aging, stirring, anything like that at all with this wine?
Yeah, so the way that I make my white wines is I start them in tank. And I do that because I want a cold fermentation. I think that's how I get the really, really vibrant aromatics in the wine that just blast out of the glass. So super cold ferment, and I'm talking like 52 degrees. Yeah, and then once I get over peak fermentation and I know that I'm on the down slopes of heat development in the fermentation, then I put it down to barrel and it goes into the cold room. So it stays cold, but I'm not generating heat anymore from the fermentation. I'm dissipating heat. So
and that's for the rosé, not the Chardonnay, right?
Yeah, well, actually both.
Both. Oh.
I made them very similarly. Yeah. So this one went down, the Chardonnay went down to 100% stainless steel barrels, dirty, so meaning lots of solid matter. We call it dirty lees or cloudy, basically, because it's still fermenting. And then once it finishes ferment and it settles out, then all the lees fall to the bottom. And I do a lot of stirring to finish the fermentation and develop a little bit of mid-palate, so just a little bit of texture. You get a little bit of the texture on the mid-palate from the whole cluster pressing. So when the grapes come in and you squeeze the juice and separate it from the skins, you do press on the skins a little bit and get a tiny bit of tannin there. Yeah. But then also this like development of just some texture and some feeling on the mid-palate that pulls the wine together. But it's not on for a long time. I mean, I'm probably only stirring for 8 weeks, and it's back in tank ready for bottle in 16 weeks. So it's a quick process.
But it's so fresh and vibrant. I mean, it makes sense that it wouldn't be a long process, right? I love it.
I mean, I'm trying to capture that fruit, and over time, you lose it in the barrel. So I really wanted to take a snapshot of Chardonnay at that point in time. It smelled so delicious, and we had plans to bottle it that early, so it wasn't a surprise to us. But it was ready. I would almost bottle it a little earlier if I had the opportunity, because you get a little bit of the dissolved CO2 that's still in the wine from fermentation. So although it's not spritzy, it does give you a little lift on the palate and make it fresh, and that's awesome to capture too.
Come on. Okay. So I'm loving the geek moments. You guys, let me know in the comments if we are feeling all the geek moments, because I don't know. My mom, sometimes she'll come in and be like, move on, but she's not saying anything. So we're going to keep geeking out. Okay. But do we have more questions? I think we have questions. Okay. So Erica said, I'd love to hear both of you things to know, starting to explore the differences in rosé. So I think she wants to know just like the differences within different styles of rosé.
Yeah, there are so many different rosés now, and there's some great rosés and some not great rosés. So I kind of touched upon the two methods of making rosé. And I think when you make rosé from the byproduct of a red ferment, you end up with not enough acid and not enough fruit and too much color. So if you see a rosé of Cabernet Sauvignon that's super duper red, you probably know that it's a byproduct of a red fermentation, and sometimes those can be a little bitter, and they mask the bitterness by leaving a little sugar hanging around, so they tend to be a little sweet, and they just get a little out of sorts. So I think the best way to judge your rosé is by the color, The lighter, usually, the more French in style. And the paleness of a rosé is an indication that it's been made purposefully for rosé and you haven't really been soaking on the skins for too long. Now, that's a bit of a generalization, but it's true probably 75% of the time. Also, pay attention to the varietal. Pinot Noir, Grenache can be really beautifully fruity wines. And by fruity, I don't mean sweet. I just mean a fruit bomb. The Cabernet Franc is kind of new to, I think, the world of rosé. There's not a lot of people making Rosé of Cab Franc, but still you get a ton of fruit, but a little bit of that more serious tone to it. So looking at the varietal can really guide you too into what to expect. If you're in the Bordeaux varietal, you're not going to be as fruit driven, but the Pinot and Grenache and sometimes Syrah, people make a lot of rosé from Syrah. That also can be really, really nice. So color, varietal, that's kind of a way to really direct you into what you're getting into. But there's a lot of great rosés out there.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. This is great. Honestly, I think you're amazing. Okay. Give me a second. I think we have another question. Hey, Laura, me again, ... This is your only dog father. Did I say that? I feel like I misread that last time. Okay. Anyway, can I interest you in a cheeseburger? I think it's birding. All right. Moving on. So to your curiosity, right? I think, one amazing thing of transition with people who get into wine, and the same thing, I'm writing a book right now, pray for me, but I am talking about this moment of just pure curiosity. And so because you are running this new vineyard, especially with all the experience that you've had, hands-on experience, right? How are you kind of exercising your curiosity in the vineyard? And then how does that translate into the winemaking process post-vineyard, post-harvest, I should say?
Well, I would answer that in two phases. I think from the viticultural side of things, from growing the grapes, there's so much to learn. So, and the interesting thing about winemaking is we only get one chance every year. So, a veteran winemaker has 25 years of experience or 30 years of experience, but they've only made wine 25 times. That's not really a lot. So. When we get curious, we have to be kind of careful because we can't just, it's not like baking a batch of cookies where you can try it and it doesn't work, you throw it away and start again, you know. So we have to do small experiments. So we might take a couple of rows or one block of a specific varietal and do an experiment and say, we want to see if we have a lower crop load, what does the wine taste like? And so you really have to kind of feed your curiosity through these little micro experiments. Because then we also have to stand back and look at the bigger picture. Right. On the winemaking side, it's similar. So you might take a couple of barrels and try something different. But I think the Unoaked Chardonnay is a really great example of sort of feeding my curiosity. We needed some, 2020 was a tough year in the Napa Valley, and we needed some additional white wine in bottle, and we had this new vineyard, and sometimes the very first crop of a young vineyard can be a little unpredictable in how much yield the grape will produce and what the quality is going to taste like. So we're like, let's try something different, and this is how these new wines are born, or how they in my experience at Clif Family, this is what happens is we're like, let's just give this a try and see how it goes. And then all of a sudden we have this incredible wine, and it's a wine that I can promise you we're going to make every single year for the life of Clif Family Winery. So feeding the curiosity here turned into a new SKU that is going to be wildly popular, which is really fun and exciting and what makes my job so interesting.
Are you going to maintain the same style despite vintage, or is it going to be different vintages?
No, I think we would definitely maintain the style. I think we will see vintage variation here, but I'm pretty sure I can do this very consistently because you're picking it early. You can capture the acid. I really think that there's so little intervention in winemaking intervention in making a wine like this. It's really about the purity of the fruit. So I really think that this can be repeated pretty successfully in years to come.
Okay. Yeah. If you're excited, let me see some wine emojis in the chat. Okay. So let's actually start talking about sustainability, because I know Whenever, all right, how am I going to word this, you guys? Bear with me. So, a lot of people have different definitions of sustainability, right? And so, I want to walk into that asking you, what is the definition of sustainability for Clif Family Winery?
So this is like the pillar of our business.
Absolutely.
So we'll just jump back to Clif Bar for a second. So sort of our parent company, we have the same owners. So Kit Crawford and Gary Erickson started Clif Bar, today own and operate Clif Bar, and started Clif Family Winery in 2004. And Clif Bar's business is built on what they call their 5 aspirations. So those 5 aspirations also guide our business at Clif Family Winery. And they are sustaining our business, sustaining our brand, sustaining our people, our planet, and our community. So every single thing that we do, we have to keep in mind, how does this serve and meet our 5 aspirations? Right. It makes decision making really easy.
Okay.
You just go back to the roots, you go back to the foundation and the values of Kit and Gary, and it makes our job a lot easier in guiding us in the decisions that we make in all aspects of the business, whether it's a decision that they're making in the culinary world of our business, or the tasting room, or accounting, or out in the vineyard.
Right.
So I do this work through organic farming, of course. So I'm more in the sustaining our planet world of the 5 aspirations. We have a whole host of certifications that we work under. The most recent is called Napa Green. We are all 100% certified organic estate vineyards and farm. So that's almost 90 acres of planted grapes that are farmed organically. But I also use these concepts to help me in community and outreach, and how we're engaging with our employees. And it's such a deep concept for us. I think sustainability has become a word that has been a little bit overused and undervalued over the years. And for us, it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability is my label. Whenever I talk to my followers, I always tell people, you have to figure out what label is important to you, because you could get kind of confused with all what's biodynamic, what's vegan, what's all of just what is important to you, and then figure out the wineries that actually fit that criteria. And any winery, when they talk about sustainability, if they mention their people, like you did as far as your 5 pillars, I know that you really are serious about sustainability, because that's one portion of conversation that is often forgotten. Do you agree with that?
100%, completely. When you think about, organic farming for the planet, yes, we want healthier soil, so we don't want to be putting harmful pesticides in the ground. But also, we have people that are working in those fields that are just walking up and down the rows, doing manual labor in the field, and they're going to take their the Roundup that you just sprayed on the ground into their home, and their little kid is crawling around. So like it goes deeper. There's so much more to it than just one layer of sustainability.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Oh, so is there anything that's like killing in you inside when it comes to wine? It's a topic that you often talk about, that you want to share with the people. Is there something top of mind? That's probably a hard question.
Oh, that's a hard question. Yeah, top of mind. Well, we have to address climate change. Yes. It's really impacting our business. So, we just had a wildfire here in the Napa Valley, and it started on May 31st. Wildfire season used to be October. And so I think as a business, we're really focusing on that. We need to pay close attention to reducing our carbon footprint, regenerative farming, addressing climate change. We have to think about where we're planting grapes and how much water we have, and we have to be more thoughtful as an industry. And it's really, really important. So those are things that we worry about every day, and we talk about every day, and we work towards better communication. And as Clif Family Winery, being a leader in those topics and those conversations, it's important.
Yes, I joke all the time and I say, climate change isn't real. I say it as a joke. Hopefully no one takes me serious, but it's something that we have to pay attention to. I mean, just, I was thinking about earlier today. It's so hot. It is so hot. I'm in DC and it's 90 degrees. There's no reason for it to be this hot already. So I can only imagine and I think that's a great segue of a question. Because you guys have this new vineyard, how has climate change affected the entire process of planting the vines and growing them over years before actually being able to have your first harvest?
Yeah, so I think that really was in the decision of where to buy the land. There are areas where it's becoming difficult to farm because number one, it's too hot. Number two, it's isolated in the mountains where we have issues with wildfires and you're more susceptible because of location, just being remote. It doesn't even have to be in the woods and surrounded by trees. You're just remote. It's hard to get to. So really that's the biggest piece, and that is the answer to that question, no doubt, is we chose the Oak Knoll district of Napa Valley as the AVA. It's further south in the valley, so it has a little bit more influence from the marine layer in the San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
It's a little cooler. We get cooler nights. It's the valley floor, so the soils have more water holding capacity, so they can kind of survive on less rain. We have a huge reservoir on the property, so we can collect rainfall, but we also decided to put a well in because, we need to have that backup for water.
Yeah.
So lots of decisions about how to handle the property, the infrastructure that's there. And the location kind of is the most important. It's on the valley floor, so where there's lots of vineyards everywhere, and we've learned that it's kind of the best place to be in this day and age.
Okay. I mean, and this also, you guys, goes into that sustainable conversation, because you have to think. A lot of people, they come to me and they ask questions. Oh, I want to start my own wine brand, or I want to own a vineyard. There's so much you have to think about, from the region, and then within the region, the climate, within the climate, what grapes can thrive. It's just, there's so much, right, that goes into the entire thought.
So much. It really takes a lot of time and experience to capture the whole picture of what it takes to have a winery. There are a lot of people that dive into it kind of as a second passion. And it doesn't take long for them to figure out, like, whoa, this is this is more than I bargained for. But right. Yeah, I mean, even down to the details of how you're managing your canopies and wine style, and the viticulture piece is a huge part of it, and then the winemaking piece is completely different, whole nother round of decisions and
right.
make in the wine world. So, but it's what keeps us on our toes.
I love it. So we actually have a question up here from T Frost. The Clif Family label is outstanding. How long will an unopened cork, or screw top, last compared to a cork?
An unopened screw top?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only thing holding me back from saying like it'll age as long as the cork does or longer is that we just don't have that much experience. Like, screw tops haven't been around long enough for me to say with 100% certainty it will last as long as a cork. I can tell you that, the closure is a seal, right? So no liquid is going to leak out of the bottle. That's the most basic piece. However, there's always oxygen permeation coming through the closure. So some people think that oxygen doesn't get through the screw cap, but in fact it does. Yes. However, it's more controlled because it's a piece of plastic, basically. And whereas a cork is this porous natural material that it varies. So one cork punched out of a cork tree, cork is bark. So one piece punched out of one tree is going to be different than another tree, or, a different spot in the tree. So you're going to have so much more variability in a cork than you do in a screw cap. You're going to have more consistency. You're going to have no TCA. So those are a lot of the reasons why we choose screw cap. So I would say it will last as long, especially for a white wine that you're not going to hold on to for decades.
And I usually, I mean, this is what I learned in school. So you have to tell me, because some things you learn and then winemakers have a whole different opinion. So I'll say what I've learned, okay? But my understanding is with screw tops, the plastic over about 2-3 years, it actually becomes less effective of holding out the oxygen. So yes, you have oxygen that comes in over time slowly, but the longer you wait to open a screw top, my understanding is that you have a higher chance of uncontrolled oxygen getting into your wine and kind of ruining the experience. Now, I've never held on to a screw top that long to tell you if that's accurate. Maybe I should do an experiment.
I know.
But maybe. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think when screw caps first came out, they were only guaranteeing the closure for 5 years. So I know in the beginning it was definitely more limited, but that has changed so much in the last 10 years, and the materials are more refined and they're better quality. So, you know, a winery like Plump Jack is a great example, or they have been bottling Cabernet under a screw cap probably for 15 years or maybe even more. And they do some under screw cap and some under cork. So they're a real great example of people who are aging wine under a screw cap long term, you know, Napa Valley Cabernet. So I think that could, what you said probably was true in the beginning, but I do think that things have improved and the quality is far superior than that now.
Okay, awesome. So we have another question here. And I really do think I want to take a moment. I was trying to get the question so I can do it. So I think my mind went in focus mode. But yeah, I mean, I would be interested. I think I do agree. That's what I'm trying to say. Let me just say that. I think I agree that there isn't enough research, and I think we should do more of a better job as an industry pushing screw tops. I think that it's awesome now, because at first, you know, whenever I was in class, we talked about corks, and that there are a lot of wineries that simply use a cork because people judge screw tops. And they don't understand that screw tops have a place in this industry, and sustainable. Talking about, you know, all these corks, I mean, they're going extinct. We got to care about our planet. We're using it for wine. So this is just another add-on to you know, Clif Family Winery being sustainable and caring about our earth, right? So I commend you guys on that.
If you have a screw cap, you don't need a foil, you know. So it's buying one piece of you know, packaging versus two. That you need to either, you know, recycle or hope that it's biodegradable and things like that. So there's a lot of, we analyze every single piece of our package to figure out how can we do better in the world of sustainability and making our packages, you know, better for the environment, lighter in weight so that the shipping costs are lower for everybody. You know, there's the bottle and the bottle weight and the paper that we're using and the tape on the boxes. It goes on and on and on.
It's like everything we do as far as the wine industry is just not sustainable at all. But we're figuring it out. You know, we have people like you and, you know, Family Clif Winery that are, I just swapped that, Clif Family Winery, who are doing their due diligence to care about our planet, the people, the animals, and the vines, the land itself. So I really do commend and thank you for that. Seriously. So we have another question. Athletic Wino said, your hollow mountain wines are incredible. Will you venture into Spring Mountain or Mount Wiener? Tell me if I'm saying that wrong.
Good question. Yeah. So we actually own almost 10 acres of Cabernet vineyard on Howell Mountain. It is what Kit and Gary acquired first in the world of owning vineyards. So that is where our Howell Mountain cabs come from. They are all estate. So we don't own any property on Spring Mountain or on Mount Veeder. I would love to kind of work with fruit from those AVAs. It would be a lot of fun. I think they're completely different wines. But given that we're moving in this direction of trying to be 100% estate, well, not necessarily 100% estate, but 100% organically farmed. So now that we have our new Oak Knoll vineyard, I think the majority of the additional Cabernet that we will make or the additional fruit that we'll need will come from that property. So we likely won't venture into other mountain AVAs, but but it would be really fun. I mean, I think there are a couple wineries that are making wines from like multiple AVAs, and then they can compare them because the winemaking style is really similar. And it's really cool to take a snapshot of how different they can be.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I know you're trying to like be cool right now, but I can see your excitement. It's like right underneath the surface of this conversation. Like, I'm trying not to geek out. I'm trying not to geek out, but I am very interested. I love it. So I have a question for you. What is the Think Like a Tree initiative?
Ooh, yeah. So trees run on renewable energy, and they recycle their own waste, and they, so our concept is to act like a tree does. So as a business, if we can do that, then we can be more sustainable, better for the environment. And that's a concept that we were taught from Clif Bar, and so again, something that is really important to us that we've pulled into our umbrella of Clif Family Winery. And it's a really nice, it's just a really nice way to think about things. You know, you really get back to your roots, you get back to Mother Earth, and if we can all think like trees, then the world would be a better place.
Yes, I love it. Oh, I mean, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm feeding off of your energy right now because I can feel it. I know we're not in the same place, but let me know, you guys, if you can see it and feel it too. It's just your smile and everything as far as talking about nature and being one with nature. So we might as well just ask. You go hiking, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me about that. I mean, last time I went hiking, I almost died, but you tell me your experience. Where do you go?
It's good because I have to do, there's, I don't know if everybody's picked up on our labels, but we're a very cycling, bicycle friendly place. So that is a bicycle cog and chain on our label. And Kit and Gary kind of discovered the wine world while they were cycling in Italy. And of course they would do these, 150-mile rides over mountains, in Europe, and they would finish their day down in the village with a beautiful meal and a nice bottle of wine. So cycling is everywhere in a very, well, maybe in a not so subtle way.
Yeah.
Within our marketing world, in our tasting room, our Howell Mountain cabs have a metal bicycle cog that's hand applied onto the bottle. So, but I'm terrible on a bike. I really can't. I mean, I can ride a bike, but I can't ride a bike like they do. So cycling
for so
is
long
not...
and like the narrow and moving, it's very scary. I don't.
Yeah. So hiking is my thing. I like my 2 feet on the ground. But it's really nice to be out and in nature and getting exercise and breathing fresh air. And one of the many great things about working in the wine industry is that you're guaranteed to live and work in a beautiful place. So the Napa Valley is gorgeous. There's lots of great hiking and cycling opportunities. So we get a chance to enjoy all of those things. And because Kit and Gary love to take care of their people, we all feel like we have the time and the energy and the resources to do a lot of these things.
Yeah, to take care of yourself. It's the most important. You cannot give all of you if you're not taking care of you. And that's why it's so important that you work for companies like Clif Family, from what you've described, where yes, you are working to the bone, but you're also taking care of yourself and able to enjoy the space that you're in. I love that. So we have a question I'm going to ask, and then we're going to pivot just a bit. Okay. So what's one wine you always return to?
Ooh, one of my wines?
Yeah, by the way, this was Erica's nerd. That's
okay. Well, I guess year in and year out, I'm going to talk about one of my wines just so because I have so much passion for them that it brings stories out too.
Shameless plug, put it in, girl.
Yeah. So my Rosé of Grenache. When I first started at Clif Family Winery, we made 150 cases, and in 2022, I'm slated to make 2,000 cases. So for a primarily direct-to-consumer driven business, that is huge growth in a short period of time. And my story with this is that every year when I make it, it's one of the largest volumes of wine that I make. So I harvest almost 35 tons of grapes, which is 2 truckloads of grapes that arrive, and I press them, and it's a 3,500 gallon tank. So it's an enormous amount of wine. So if I mess it up, it's really bad.
Yes.
So I get so nervous, and I'm really careful and diligent, and I tiptoe around the tank all through fermentation. And then when it goes down to the stainless steel barrels and it finishes fermentation, and I put my nose in the glass for the first time as finished wine, it's always like this aha moment where I sort of smile and say, sweet, I did it again.
Yes.
So that's my
Ooh, she did it again.
always go back to. And there's so much consistency. All I have to do is smell it, and I know, okay, I got through it.
Okay. I love it. You have to have your stories. Oh, I love it. Okay. So I don't know if this is going to be the last question or not. I think it depends on how deep you decide to get. So if you're talking to me, you're looking at me. I am this young girl who watched this live, and I'm like, you know what? I want to be a winemaker one day. What advice would you give to go from a person who's an absolute novice? They drink wine, but they don't really know much about wine. What would be your advice for them and the person who's been in the industry and wants to make that transition?
Yeah, I think getting into the cellar is the most important thing that you could do if you want to get into production, right? So if you want to become a winemaker, you want to get into the production world of wine, working in the cellar is the #1 priority. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to smell it and taste it and experience moving wine and experience tasting wine at different stages of the process. And that is how you really develop your foundation as a winemaker. If you're interested in getting into wine from like a tasting sommelier perspective, I think someone said this to me when I was younger, which is buy a bottle of wine and find a review on it, and you can choose your reviewer, whether it's the Wine Spectator or one of the publications that are subscription based. Buy it and taste it and read the tasting notes. So it's not that you have to taste those things that they're describing, but that, you can say, wow, is there, Meyer lemon in here? And what does that taste like? And you can train your palate. You do have to train your palate. It doesn't.
The muscle.
Exactly. Yeah. And it takes experience. And when you guide yourself with a publication, these are really knowledgeable people. And yes, they're only one person that's tasting, so it is only one opinion. But it just gives you talking points, ideas, and guides you in the right direction and helps you learn how to taste wine.
Yes. You're speaking my language, because this is all that I talk about. Every live tasting I have on TikTok, it's about experience. Just go out and drink wine. There's a whole systematic approach of tasting. There's plenty of wine literature out there, but the best way to gain that knowledge, as you just said, is to experience it and test yourself. Ask yourself questions. Look at a full list of flavors and aromas, primary, secondary, tertiary, whatever, and ask yourself. The reason why I'm going in like this right now, just so you know, is because I did that for the live tasting. I tasted your wines. I think we were talking about your Chardonnay, and I looked at it and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm getting that. And I went back and I smelled again, and I was telling them, you have to do that, because sometimes your mind doesn't even consider what the other aromas are. So if you at least look at it, you can go back and ask yourself and assess. Now, don't force yourself.
Right.
Because we can trick ourselves into smelling anything. But
and coming up with those words too. Sometimes you smell something and you know what you're smelling, but you just can't quite find the word to describe it. And when you're reading tasting notes, you can say, oh yeah, that's what it smells like. Oh gosh, there's, grapefruit in, this Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
And of course, it doesn't mean that you might find, 100 other descriptors that suit the wine as well. So it's just a nice experience, a nice way to train your palate. Yeah.
Oh, we have another question. Okay. Core said, would you recommend taking the WSET courses as well if you want to be a winemaker?
You certainly don't have to. I have never taken any of those classes. So being a winemaker is really hands-on. So I would say, working a harvest and often that dual Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere harvest experience is great, because the wine is made in that first 3 months. So you learn
Mm-hmm.
when to pick the grapes, the chemistry of the grapes when they're coming in, the fermentation style, how they're handling the pressing, the barrel selection, the malolactic fermentation or not. Like those are the key, that's the foundation of the winemaking in the first 3 months. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
get double duty experience in a year, and you can go to the Southern Hemisphere and work in February and March, and then you come up here
Yep.
for August, September, October, then you get double the amount of experience in 1 year. Do that for a couple of years and you'll excel pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the most valuable way to get to the production world.
Come on now. So how do you feel your chemistry background? Now, I know you went back to school, so we're not talking about that portion of your studies. But when you decided to really become a winemaker, what foundational chemistry knowledge helped you transition into this field?
I don't think anything I learned in college was like, anything that I've used in the wine world more than just that general idea of thinking scientifically, right?
Mm,
I always say that my background in science, you certainly do not need to have that to become a winemaker. But the way that it helps me is to think about things scientifically, whether it's an experiment in the vineyard or an experiment in the winery, or whether it's a problem. There's something going on with the wine, or there's a flavor that I might not like that I want to try to alter or change, or something that I really do like that I'm trying to achieve. It just really, and my brain is very kind of scientific and thinks like that kind of in all aspects of my life. So it's
yeah.
really that training on how to think and how to solve problems. And then all the wine details, it really came in the grad program and in the work experience. I mean, there are a lot of winemakers out there that don't have a degree in winemaking. They may be like an art history major. It's not required. The
Yeah.
experience is a very powerful piece of the wine journey and becoming a winemaker. And I think a lot of people go that path too, which is great.
You know, what you just said, it actually made me think about something. So just bear with me as we go on this ride of random to point, okay? So whenever I talk to a lot of scientists who are now winemakers, they talk about how they went from being feeling like a scientist to feeling more like an artist who uses science as their way to create this bottle of wine, right? When I was younger, I was actually classically trained as a vocalist. And when I started, I joined, jazz bands and all of that. I actually had a very hard time transitioning from a more, I guess, strict approach of singing to being able to be slightly off the beat, to scat, to do whatever. It was like very liberating, but it was hard for me to switch off my mind from a classical vocalist to a jazz vocalist. Did you experience that, kind of having the scientific mind that you have and then moving into a more artistic way to experience your science, your chemistry background? Was it difficult kind of moving from place to place?
Yeah, it takes some redirecting for sure. I mean, I think especially when you come out of the academic world and you go into the professional world, you really have to start to retrain the way that you're making these decisions and how you're going about making these wines for sure. And I think one example of where that comes into play is that I learned from one of my mentors that when you're making wine, you're making a million decisions about what to do with each lot of wine and how to put them together. So from the decision to harvest or anything you're doing in the vineyard prior to that, all the way through to bottling, you're making hundreds and hundreds of decisions. And one of the best decisions that you can make is to do nothing. Right? So you're tasting a fermentation and it might be sluggish and it's slowing down, and the scientist in me would want to deal with it. Let's figure this out. What's going on? Sometimes it's better just to sit back, look at it in a month. And the whole wine moves very slowly, so it's not like you can check on it every single day. You have to check on it every 2 weeks or once a month or once every 3 months. So to kind of sit back and relax and let it take its course. It's a natural product. And to take the science out of it for a moment and let it be is a little hard to adjust to when your brain works the other way.
Right. Okay. So, and I love that how you said that, because I feel like we do that with life in general, where we kind of have a strong hold on what we think is supposed to happen. And when we don't know what's going on, we're like, get it together. But no, sometimes
Yeah.
you got to let it ride.
Mm-hmm.
Art and science are absolutely interconnected. That's what Erica had to say in the comments.
Yeah, and those people who come at it from a more artistic standpoint, they have to force themselves into the science of it too. It works in the opposite direction. But that's that's the beauty of winemaking and wine science in the wine world, is that the two kind of dance together, and it's really a beautiful balance. And when you can have those two concepts in balance, you can make really, really beautiful wines. You just have to figure out where the science should kick in and where the art should kick in, and maybe that's what differentiates the great winemakers.
Yes, it takes time. You have to figure out your voice and have that discipline and know when to back off and when to interact. I mean, that's in every field. Is as you become more of a master of your craft, you get more insight. You know when to back off and when not to. So that makes sense. So we do have a discount, which I'm going to be completely honest, you guys. I thought I had it, and it is not in my file. Do you know what the code is?
Ooh, give me a second.
If we don't worry, you guys. If you're signed up to my mailing list, I will mail it out, and then also it will be in my bio. So give me some time, because I came on here ready and was not ready. Okay. So you guys, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm going to post it. If you haven't signed up to my mailing list, sign up to my mailing list. I will put it out there, and it will also be in my bio description with the link to our Clif Family Winery site. Okay, so you guys stay connected to that. Keep an eye out for that. I might even post a little video so we can remind everyone. But beyond that, is there anything you want to leave with the people?
Oh, this is just such a great platform to have this conversation. I'm loving it, and I thank everybody for joining. I've seen a couple of familiar names pop up. I try not to read the screen because I get really distracted in my thought process, but I've seen some friends up there, so hello to them.
Yes.
And it's been great to connect with you. Really, really a pleasure and an honor to be on here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. I mean, honestly, I love when I have lives where we're able to geek out and still maintain viewership. I don't know how we do it, but you clearly are, you dropped a lot of knowledge. I think that you have been very open and honest about your journey and your experience. And again, that's why we do Tasting Thursdays. We do it so that we get to know the wine lovers behind wine. So thank you for being a wine lover, for making that transition in your life to dedicate your life to sustainable wines, to Clif Family Winery, to making delicious wines. And trust me, someone asked earlier, like, which wine are you going back to? I am going back to the Chardonnay. This one right here, this is my friend right here. Okay. All right, you guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and skedaddle. You guys know I'm not in the business of kidnapping people. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. Let's cheers. Ready? Tick, tick. Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Be well.